Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to turn your post notifications so you don't miss any of our new videos. And now let's get right into it. The gray sky hung low over the small town cemetery, casting a gloomy pallor over the mourners gathered to bid farewell to Sarah's father. The air was thick with the scent of freshly dug earth, and the only sound was the soft rustle of leaves as a light breeze swept through the trees. Sarah stood with her mother, Linda, and her siblings, feeling numb as they lowered the coffin into the ground. Linda's eyes were fixed on the casket, her face a mask of stoicism, as if she was determined not to show any emotion. Sarah couldn't help but feel a pang of anger at her mother's indifference. Didn't she feel anything? Didn't she care that her husband was gone? As the service drew to a close, Linda stepped forward to thank everyone for coming. Sarah watched her mother with a mix of resentment and pity. Linda was always in control, always telling everyone what to do. Even now, she was determined to handle all the arrangements herself, as if it was her duty to take care of everything. Sarah felt invisible, as if her grief was not important. She glanced over at her husband, who was holding their youngest child, and tried to push back the sense of isolation that was creeping over her. She knew that she needed to be strong for her family, but it was hard when she felt so alone. As the mourners began to drift away, Sarah stayed behind, watching as the gravediggers filled in the hole. She felt a sudden urge to scream, to rage against the injustice of it all. Why did her father have to die? Why did Linda have to be so cold? Why did she feel so lost? Eventually, Sarah turned to leave, her heart heavy with sorrow and anger. She knew that the road ahead was going to be long and difficult, but she was determined to find a way through. She would not let her family's dysfunction define her. She would not let her mother's control consume her. She would find a way to heal, to grow, to be free. In the weeks after the funeral, Sarah struggled to keep up with the demands of daily life. Linda seemed to be everywhere, constantly calling and texting, checking in on her and the kids. Sarah knew that her mother meant well, but the constant barrage of messages made her feel suffocated and helpless. As Sarah's anxiety and depression worsened, her husband suggested that she seek therapy. At first, Sarah was hesitant, but eventually she agreed to go. She found herself sitting in a small, dimly lit office, facing a stranger who seemed to know more about her than she did. As Sarah began to talk about her past, memories flooded back, raw and painful. She talked about her father, how he was always there for her, how he loved her unconditionally. She talked about her mother, how she was distant and controlling, always putting her own needs above everyone else's. She talked about her siblings, how they had all suffered in different ways. The therapist listened, nodding, asking questions, offering insights. Sarah felt a mix of relief and fear. It was hard to confront the truth, to acknowledge the wounds that had never fully healed. But it was also liberating to finally be able to speak her mind, to put words to the pain that had always been there. As Sarah delved deeper into her past, she began to understand the impact of her family's trauma on her relationships and mental health. She realized that the dysfunction in her family had been passed down from generation to generation, that the wounds of the past were still affecting her in the present. With the therapist's guidance, Sarah began to see her mother in a new light. She began to understand that Linda's controlling behavior was a manifestation of her own unresolved trauma, that she was not just a cold and heartless person. She began to see that she herself had been perpetuating the same patterns in her own life, that she had been unconsciously repeating the same mistakes her mother had made. As the therapy sessions continued, Sarah felt a growing sense of empowerment. She began to take small steps to assert her independence, to set boundaries with her mother, to make choices that were true to her own values and desires. She knew that the road ahead was still long and uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she felt that she had a map, a guide, a way forward. As Sarah continued with her therapy sessions, she found that she was gradually starting to heal. The wounds of the past were still there, but they no longer felt so raw and painful. She was beginning to find a sense of peace and acceptance that had eluded her for so long. At the same time, she found that she was becoming more confident and assertive in her relationships with others. She was no longer willing to let her mother or anyone else dictate her life. She was learning to trust her own instincts and follow her own path. With her husband's support, Sarah began to set boundaries with her mother. She no longer let Linda control every aspect of her life, but instead made her own decisions about what was best for her family. She still loved her mother, but she no longer felt the need to be controlled by her. As Sarah's mental health improved, she found that her relationships with her husband and children also began to improve. She was able to be more present and attentive, more loving and supportive. She felt that she was finally becoming the kind of mother and wife she had always wanted to be. One day, Sarah received a call from her mother. Linda had been struggling with her own emotions, and she wanted to apologize for the way she had treated Sarah in the past. Sarah was hesitant at first, but she could hear the sincerity in her mother's voice, and she decided to give her a chance. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and Linda began to talk more openly and honestly than they ever had before. They talked about their fears and hopes, their regrets and dreams. They began to acknowledge the wounds of the past and to work together to heal them. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, Sarah felt that she was finally moving forward. She knew that the road ahead would still be bumpy at times, but she felt that she finally had the tools and the support she needed to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As she looked out at the world around her, Sarah felt a sense of hope and possibility that she had not felt in a long time. She knew that the scars of the past would always be a part of her, but she also knew that she had the strength and resilience to overcome them. She was finally free, and she was ready to embrace whatever the future held. As Sarah reflected on her journey, she realized that healing was not a linear process. There were still moments of darkness and despair, times when she felt like she was back at the beginning. But she also knew that those moments were temporary and that she could always find her way back to the light. She continued to see her therapist, but she also began to explore other ways of healing, including meditation, yoga, and journaling. She found that these practices helped her to stay grounded and centered, to connect with her own inner wisdom and intuition. With each passing day, Sarah felt that she was becoming more fully herself. She was no longer defined by her family's dysfunction or her mother's control. She was a woman in her own right, with her own dreams and aspirations. As she looked out at the world around her, Sarah felt a sense of wonder and gratitude. She was alive, and she was free. She knew that the road ahead would be challenging at times, but she also knew that she had the strength and resilience to face whatever lay ahead.